Just put the flag on here. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, we're all ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
United
flag
States of
of the
America,
United States of
to the
America,
republic for which it stands,
republic for which
one
it
nation,
stands,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Well, that didn't work.
Well, great. How's everybody doing today? Everybody good? Everybody enjoying that beautiful weather we've got out there? Mary, it's nice to see you. How are you feeling?
I am feeling great. I got my PICC line yesterday, chemo again on Friday, only 2 more rounds. Like I told you guys last week, I'm halfway done with this. I'll be done on Thanksgiving. I mean, what more can I be thankful for?
Great. Super, super. Well, I had nothing else to add today other than that we do have our speaker on board. Was there anything from anybody in the club that they wanted to share with the rest of the participants today?
Just glad Matt changed his back.
You guys probably couldn't hear that, but Mac, Dan Goss said he's glad you changed the background on your Zoom. He's very pleased with that.
We're boxing now.
I can't believe it. Mac is speechless.
That's right. Speaking of that, everybody on the Zoom should probably mute themselves for the presentation so that we don't interfere. I'll mute myself.
Maybe next time I need to phrase that question. Do we have any constructive comments from the group? Okay.
Just wait till he's president.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to, Joe Schmidt's going to stop over in the camera and he's going to introduce our guest speaker, and looking forward to a great program this afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I didn't know I was going to be the introducer today, but I am more than happy to introduce Amy Fleming. She is going to talk to us today about a program for gun safety. This is not a program about taking guns away. It's about gun safety. Just like when I was a kid, the NRA taught us how to be safe with guns. And Amy's program is based on a simple acronym of SMART, besmartforkids.org. To put things in perspective, here's a story that I don't even think Amy would know about. And that is that next month will be the 10-year anniversary when I read in the newspaper about up along the Mon River, about a very bad accident that happened in the borough of Liberty. Right up the Mon, you got Liberty, you got Glassport, you got Portview. 5-year-old Gavin Thompson went into his father's bedroom and climbed up on the top shelf of a closet. His father was a Portview police officer. I suppose Gavin thought he wanted to be just like his dad and be a little police officer. And he watched his father every day put that .45 caliber revolver on that top shelf. That particular day, he climbed up there, got the firearm, and that day he died. What Amy has to tell you today is some rules that are very easy to follow and can teach us a lot, or remind us a lot about safety with firearms. Please welcome Amy Fleming.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was quite a powerful introduction. But Joe is right. Stories like that are the reason that I'm involved in this organization. And one child's death is too many. So I appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak to you today about Be Smart. Thank you to Joe for introducing, connecting our group to your club. And thank you to Chuck for setting this up. I know this is a couple months in the making. We were supposed to, I think, present to you guys back in March, and unfortunately, we got pushed back, but here we are today. So we are grateful to be present at your meeting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this works. You would think I'd be better at Zoom. Okay. Does that work for you guys? Okay. And just a forewarning, if you hear anybody screaming, that is probably my 2-year-old. My husband's working from home, so he can hopefully, we can avoid having her in the room, but the walls aren't that thick. So sometimes you can hear her if she's having a day. So again, my name's Amy. I live right down the road from where you guys are meeting in Emerald Fields. I'm a Pine Richland family. I live with my husband and my 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I've been in Pittsburgh for about a little over 4 years. I became involved in this organization right after the Parkland shooting, which was about 2.5 years ago or so, because I was tired of hearing the news of these tragic stories and seeing our children die from gun violence, and wanted to do something about it rather than just sit at home and be sad about it and be worried about my own kids. So I became involved in this organization, quickly found Be Smart, and that's where I've dedicated my time for the last couple of years. I'm a volunteer, so I just do this on the side to help keep our world a safer place for my kids and your kids and grandkids, et cetera. So I'm gonna hopefully stick to my time frame. I'll try for 15 minutes or so. And then if you guys have any questions at the end, hopefully we'll have time to answer any. So let's first talk about the numbers. Firearms are the second leading cause of death for American children and the leading cause of death for Black children in the United States. As this slide shows, nearly 1,500 American children under the age of 18 are killed with guns every year. That's an average of 4 children a day. When American children are killed with guns, the majority of those deaths, 53% of those deaths, are homicides, and that's nearly 800 children a year. Also, 600 children die by firearm suicide every year, and nearly 100 are unintentionally shot and killed, just like the story that Joe shared earlier. We know that approximately 4.6 million US children live in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. And I actually think, I know that that number is much higher right now. This statistic was from a couple years ago, and we know that since the pandemic has started, gun sales are at an all-time high. A couple statistics that I recently found that I wanted to share. Back in March of this year, the FBI reported a record-setting 3.7 million firearm background checks that were completed. That record was then shattered again a few months later during all the Black Lives Matter protests, and that they reported 3.9 million background checks for firearms. Another study showed that about 110,000 people acquired a firearm in response directly to the pandemic. That's 47,000 new gun owners. And about 55,000 people who currently store at least one firearm loaded and not locked up said they adopted this practice in response to the pandemic. So that's going backwards to what we are talking about today. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make national headlines, the reality is for our kids under the age of 13, gun homicides most frequently occur in the home. One study showed that nearly 90% of unintentional shootings, shooting deaths and injuries among children under the age of 15 occur at home, 90%. We also know that in incidences of gunfire on school grounds, 78% of the shooters obtain the guns from their home or the home of their friends or relatives. I know this is a really emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. Some of you may be parents, grandparents, some may be gun owners, and some may not be gun owners. You may have had personal experiences with guns, and you may have even been impacted by gun violence. We believe that most gun owners want to be responsible gun owners. So we're here today to talk about what all of us, both gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure that our children don't have access to guns, unsupervised access. So for now, let's, sorry, is my face blocking the screen for you guys? No, okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. For now, let's take a break from this crazy world and leave politics at the door. We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about policy, which will be a much needed break for myself because I feel like that's all we hear about within the last couple of weeks. Let's agree on three things. One, we all want kids to grow up happy and healthy. Two, we all have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, families, and communities. And that includes whether or not we choose to have a gun in the home. And three, if we can prevent even one child gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. Again, we're not here to talk about laws or policies, so let's set those aside today. Joe shared a really powerful story. I'm just going to talk about 4 more instances that you may or may not remember over the past couple of years. These are just a couple of the headlines that we've seen. Some of you may remember from the news, the first story in the top left. In January of 2018, there was a school shooting in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. At least 16 people were shot and wounded, and 2 of them were killed. The 16-year-old shooter had gained access to his stepfather's unsecured pistol from his bedroom. The next tragedy took place in May of 2018. A 4-year-old boy from Louisa, Virginia, unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother, Tyson, after accessing an unsecured gun that was kept high in an upper cabinet, very similar to Joe's story. That one really hits home to me. I have a 2- and a 4-year-old, and I can see how that can happen because they're curious, and they think that they're playing with each other. The next headline on the bottom left illustrates that when kids are looking to carry guns out of fear, easy access to guns can help facilitate the cycle of violence. 17-year-old King Zeke of Jackson, Mississippi, told the newspaper that some young people in his community carry guns out of fear of being robbed or shot, and they believe that having a gun on them will allow them to defend themselves. And finally, our final story, Mikey from Brewster, New York. He was a friendly, popular 8th grader, an expert bowler, an avid athlete, and he loved video games. In January of 2013, he came home from school, took one of his father's unlocked loaded guns and shot himself. His family knew Mikey to be a happy kid, and they don't believe that he had planned to die that day. But with easy access to a loaded gun, Mikey made an impulsive decision that tragically became a fatal one. All 4 of these stories show the fallout of when young people get their hands on unsecured guns. So that brings us to our acronym, Be Smart, and I'm going to go over each of these letters in more detail. Let's start with S, secure your guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households, again, that number is higher, I'm sure right now, contain at least 13 million households with children contain at least 1 gun. And the majority of children in gun-owning households know where the gun is stored. We already talked about that in incidences of gunfire in school grounds, the majority of shooters obtain the gun from their own home or the home of relatives or friends. So what do I mean by securing guns? Guns should be stored locked and unloaded with the ammunition stored separately. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun. We know that that can lead to tragedy. Like we talked about the couple stories that we've already shared today. And just like Zeke from Mississippi talked about the complicated safety reasons that push some teens to want a gun. Teens feel a variety of emotions around guns, and this can range from curiosity to fascination to fear. So as adults, it's our responsibility to prevent easy access to guns. Research also finds that responsible gun storage is associated with decreased risk of firearm suicide and unintentional firearm injury among children. One study showed that households that locked both firearms and ammunition had a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. So some commonly used responsible storage practices include a cable lock, a lockbox, a firearm safe. They have those biometric safes that you can just put your fingerprint on and it opens it without putting in a code. And we always encourage people to store the the firearm ammunition separately from the actual firearm. I'll talk about what we do in a little bit other than giving this presentation, but we are in the community at tabling events, and we always have cable gun locks to give away. We've recently put a big billboard out in Ambridge with the idea that anybody who drives by and sees a sign and needs a gun lock, we will send them one for free, no questions asked. Unsecured guns also contribute to the number of guns stolen every year. About 380,000 guns are stolen from private gun owners, and gun owners were 3 times more likely to have a gun stolen if they carried the gun within the last month. So storing a gun in a glove compartment or underneath a car seat is not considered safe storage. Moving on to M is model responsible behavior. Like we said before, every law-abiding adult has a right to decide whether or not they want a gun in the home, but we can't rely on curious kids not to find guns. The majority of children know where their parents store their guns, and more than 1/3 reported actually handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. Nearly 25% of parents didn't know that their child had ever handled a gun within their house. So it's always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. We can preach to our kids until we're blue in the face. And we can say, oh, our kids always listen, they would never touch that, but they're kids, and kids by nature are curious and want to explore new things. One study found that young children who go through a week-long safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach or play with a handgun when they find one. So modeling responsible behavior means that adults make sure kids don't even have that opportunity to access guns. That being said, you can't always control the environment your child is in at all times. So we should teach them to not touch a gun if they come across and to tell an adult immediately. Some of you may be thinking, I don't have young kids in the home, which is fine. But even if you know a kid and they ever come inside your home, we want you to practice the safe storage. Because a lot of times the kids, maybe their parents don't have guns, but grandpa has a gun and they know where that is and they're curious. A stands for ask. As we've mentioned, about 4.6 million US children live in a household with at least one loaded unlocked gun. And that's why it's important to ask about firearms in other homes. So what are some things we ask myself as a mom with young kids when I'm going to someone else's home? My kid, any allergies, peanut allergies? Do you have a pool? Do you have a car seat if you're going to be driving my kid somewhere? This should be no different. We want this to be normal, easy conversation, that the same thing you're going to ask about any other risk factor for our kids, guns should be included, and it shouldn't be taboo. I'm not going to touch on this too much, but we do encourage people to use technology. It can be awkward. It can be really awkward with family members. But instead of having a face-to-face, it's perfectly fine to text before you come. Hey, thank you so much for having us for Thanksgiving. I know that you guys have guns in the homes. I just want to make sure that they're going to be locked out of sight and ammunition stored separately before we come over, because I know my kids are super curious and I don't trust them, something like that. R stands for recognize the role of guns in suicide. So access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death. We saw that in Mikey's story. As our children get older, we may need to consider another look at the storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock, you may want to think, about getting a gun safe. We know how curious children can be, and as they get older, we need to adapt accordingly. Also, if you or your loved one is in distress, you might want to consider temporarily removing a gun from the house. There's a couple of things to take into consideration. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they attempt with a gun. 85% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death. That's a much higher fatality than any other means of self-harm. And this contributes to the fact that 40% of child suicides involve a gun. So if you consider temporarily removing a gun from your home, how do you actually do that? Where can you bring it? Local law enforcements may be willing to temporarily store your guns for you. Some licensed gun dealers or gun ranges may be willing to temporarily store your gun. Or you could give it to a friend or a family that you trust, just to get it outside of your home if somebody's at risk of suicide at your home. A couple statistics to discuss. The National Youth Survey conducted by the CDC showed that 17% of high school students surveyed had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. One study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households reported having easy access to guns. And we know what that means. Another statistic I recently came across, the US Census Bureau survey reported that 41% of adult responders nationwide reported symptoms of clinical anxiety or depression during the third week of July of 2020. By comparison, only 11% of adults reported those symptoms in an earlier study in 2019. So this study was taken from adults, but I think that translates to children. This is a crazy time we're in, between everything going on, COVID being the number one stressor, and depression, anxiety, it's all through the roof. So pair that with easy gun access and it can be devastating. Here are some resources that we have, a bunch of handouts we're happy to provide for you guys as well, if anybody ever needs resources for a suicide hotline. And then our last letter is T. That is the power of Be Smart, stands for tell. We have heard from people that because of this presentation and getting this information, they know how to ask about the presence of guns before their children go to other people's homes. And that enables them and empowers them to talk to their family members about it as well. Something that many people have never even considered before. And research shows that law enforcement, the military, and hunting or outdoor groups are particularly effective at communicating safe storage practices. We are trying to get our message out and get into the community. And we recently have partnered with Northern Regional Police Department, who they're being amazing. They're trying to connect us with other organizations, but especially shooting clubs or gun clubs or gun shops. It's hard for us to get in there because they immediately hear gun safety and they're like, no, you want to take our guns away. And that's not at all what we want to do. We just want to make sure if they're around people who are shooting guns, who own guns or selling guns, that they can convey this message as well, that if you're going to have a gun, that's fine. Just be safe about it. So again, our acronym is secure, model, ask, recognize, and tell. And that's it. So in addition to this presentation, basically we give this presentation to anybody who is willing to listen, PTAs, neighborhood groups, school boards, groups such as Rotary clubs such as yourselves. And we also are trying to get into the community. This past summer, we had a full calendar packed of tabling events, community days, et cetera, and everything basically was canceled because of COVID, but we're still trying to do virtual presentations and get our information out to in other ways. We do have a postcard that it's basically looks like that, that we have given to food banks. We are trying to connect to schools to hand out in the school lunches that they're providing students, even if they're not present in schools. But we really need your help to spread the message. Like I said, it's hard for us to get in with some of the groups because, you know, especially around this area, people just don't want to talk about guns. But any ideas or connections that you guys have for where we could, you know, grow our relationships, we are all ears and we would love to hear from you guys. So that's it. That's the presentation. I don't know how much time I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
I have one. Jim, may I ask my question?
I lost control of my mouse, but I don't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, well, I turned it off because I was having lunch. At any rate, were the statistics in the front end mostly about handguns, or were they like rifles, like hunting rifles or something like that?
You know, that's a really good question. And I don't think it, you mean about having a gun in the home? like
Yeah, and some of the early statistics you quoted, yes.
Yeah, I don't think it specifies. I think it can be any type of firearm. I'm happy to look into that, but I think that overall statistic is just, across the board, rifles, handguns, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks for the question. I'm trying to,
Amy,
yeah,
I would just encourage you to, I'm sorry.
I can hear you, you're good.
Okay. I would just encourage you to, the Rotary Club sponsors an event in Mars every year. Unfortunately, it got canceled, but called Apple Fest. And they usually get 3,000-4,000 people out. I'm sure it would be worthwhile for your organization to have a booth there. I'm sure we could help to accommodate that for you.
That would be amazing. Wait, was it Gary?
Yeah.
Is that who asked it? Okay. That's funny because I remember at the beginning of the year, I kind of like browsed through all the community magazines and I saw Apple Fest and I emailed someone to see if we could get there and I never got a response, but that would be wonderful. Email gets lost in the shuffle all the time. So if you know someone or the club knows someone who could connect us, I don't know if they'll have it this March, but in the future, we would love to be part of that.
It will be the first Saturday of October of next year. It's always the first Saturday of the October.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully next year we're in a better place than right now. Yeah. Okay. Great. We'll put that in our calendar next year sometime. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm trying to get out of this green so I can stop sharing so I can see everybody, but I don't know why it's not. I lost my mouse. Maybe. Okay, there we go. Okay.
We have, sorry, I was trying to utilize a separate phone for a microphone for if we had any questions here in the group, but it's creating too much feedback with the speaker system and everything. That was me causing those problems, so I'm really sorry. So we were trying to do that so that we could circulate around the room. But are there any questions at all from anybody to Amy in attendance here today? Ken, can you come up?
Just a comment. Tell Amy that I will let Brian know of her interest for Apple Fest.
Okay, Ken Fleeson, Amy, he wants you to know that he'll reach out to Brian Fleeson from the Satellite Club who coordinates the Apple Fest to make sure he knows of your interest in that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thanks. What's the best, just so I can, who's the best person to contact like next, I don't know when they start planning it, like next summer? Like, should I contact Ken directly or what's the best way to?
Okay, it's his address is B Fleeson, FLEESON at Lectromat, LECTROMAT.com.
Great. Okay, I will make a note to reach out so we don't.
And Ken will make a note with Brian because I think we usually send out emails to all the prior participants and interested folks when they're sending out that information. So if we get you added to the list and you have his email address, hopefully we can get it covered on both fronts.
That would be great. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions from the group here or anybody on the Zoom call?
I'll just make a statement if I may.
Hello, Jim.
Hello. So my thing is that I got after the last shooting in a synagogue in Pittsburgh, I don't remember the date of that, 2018, 2019. At any rate,
it was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? At any rate, I went out and got a permit to carry a gun because I'm pretty involved with my church. And I thought, well, if I'm out front, maybe I could help if something occurred. But then I have the permit. I've never bought a firearm yet because I was just still been nervous. I don't know how to properly handle one. So, and then I still have twins who are 17 in my house and I have a 21-year-old living in my house. And I just haven't been able to bring myself to get it done. But if I do, it's going to be under lock and key, and it's going to be after I have training. That's the only way I'd ever do it.
That's great. And unfortunately, I mean, again, I don't want to get into policy, but you really don't need training. You can need, hours in the car before you get your driver's license, but that's not true for guns. And I know a lot of these shooting clubs, they have safety classes, and like I said, we met with the police department a couple weeks ago, and one of the officers used to run the safety class. And we always encourage people, again, we are not an anti-gun group by any means. We just want people to be safe about it. So I know that there's, if you ever get to the point and you don't know where to go, I can get you resources to find a safety class. And on the flip side, if anybody is in a shooting club or anything like that, we are trying, we'd love to be a part of those safety classes. I personally do not know how to handle a gun, and I'm not going to ever try to pretend, but I would love to have the opportunity during a safety class to have a 10-minute spiel to say, this is the importance, this is why it's important to store the gun securely. So if anyone has a pool in one of those clubs, that would be great as well.
Amy, what are your funding requirements and sources, and how's all that work?
So we are, that's a great question. We are, so we're under Moms Demand Action. That's our parent group. However, that group does focus on policy, and I'm part of Moms Demand Action, but I try to distance myself when I'm talking about Be Smart, because people, I don't know if anyone has knows about Moms Demand Action, but sometimes people see the red shirts and it's a turnoff. That being said, we are a nonprofit. We have different funding from them because we don't, it's public health campaign. They're more in the policy, and we're, completely separate. So we have a 501c3, and we, from Everytown and Moms Demand Action, I think we have a very small yearly budget of maybe 300 or so, and that really goes toward all the postcards, all the t-shirts like this for our volunteers, getting all the material to hand out, crafts for the kids at the tabling events, etc. So then on top of that, we just do fundraising on our own. We have a team page that is tax deductible that we encourage our members to post or try to fundraise that way. And then I spoke about that billboard. We just had for 2 months, and that was from a private donor who wanted the money to go towards an actual something like tangible. So we thought that would be a creative way to see if we got any response and spread the message in a pretty rural area. And so that, it's kind of all over the board, but we're working on fundraising. We have minimal budget. So, and one of our members who recently joined does have a fundraising background. So she's trying to work on that as well, because we've been pretty slow in that regard. Did I answer your question? I don't know if I did.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
Amy, thank you for what you're doing. It's a tough job, but I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's it's been fun. It's been, when we're out in the community, we definitely get a lot of different perspectives. Luckily, no one's been really nasty toward me yet, because I do think, even if people are really standoffish when they first come to our table or hear, what the topic is, as soon as we kind of break it down and say, we're not talking about policy at all. Safety is what the issue is. People are really receptive. And in my opinion, we are so divided right now. And I think, at least when it comes to gun, that topic, which is, we have both sides all over. Be Smart really brings everyone together, because at the end of the day, I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that we want to keep kids safe. I mean, whether or not you want background checks, et cetera, we want kids to be safe. So I think Be Smart is kind of the bridge that really can pull both sides and find common ground. And that's what we need to do in general with everything, but it's a starting point. So Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Anything else?
Every time I keep approaching the iPad to think we're done, somebody else asks the questions. Do we have any other questions at all? Amy, thank you so much. It was so informative and just learned things that did not know before. Obviously, anything we can do to protect our children and our communities just makes so much sense. So thanks for sharing with us today. And as you guys work on your fundraising, don't forget to let Richmar Rotary know, because we certainly would like to be supportive of what you're doing also.
Great, we will. Thank you again. And I know Chuck has my email, and Joe, I'm happy to put it in the chat. Otherwise, if you guys think of something in a couple days, oh, Be Smart would be great in this organization, please, I'll type it in the chat before I step away, but please always reach out, and hopefully we can circle back in a couple months at one of the festivals or something like that. But again, thank you, Joe, for connecting us, and Chuck for getting this finally scheduled and on the books. We were honored to be part of your meeting.
Amy, is it okay if I put your email in the newsletter?
Oh, that would be great. You have it, right? The Be
Yeah.
Smart Pittsburgh. Okay. Yeah. So I won't put it in the chat. Yeah, please do. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks. One more thing. Do you guys mind if I just take a quick picture for our group? Because we like to, show what we're doing. I'll do it from far away so you won't see anyone.
Smile,
Is that okay?
Mary.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you all on the call and in person. Have a great day. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you soon. Take care.